So you're asking your body to do something it's never done before, and in return, your body's going, hey, yo, we need some vitamins. We need some minerals. We need some nutrition down in here. Episode 959 of Diz Runs Radio is a quick tip episode. Today's quick tip, managing Runger and weight goals. Today's topic, a little bit fraught with some third rails that I'm going to try not to touch. But this has been a subject that's been kind of requested / asked about a couple times whenever I've put out posts or put out messages going, hey, what kind of things would you like me to talk about? I've had a couple folks that have been, have said something along the lines of, hey, I've had situations in the past, and I've certainly heard this in other Facebook groups as well. So I know that this is something that's at least semi-common, where I've been training for a race, whether it's a half marathon, ultra, it doesn't matter. Training for a race, and I'm hungry because I'm running so much more. I'm eating all the things, and I end up gaining 3, 5, 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 pounds leading up to the race. And I'd kind of rather not do that. So do you have tips on nutrition, on things that I can do to satisfy the hunger, to make sure I'm fueling my body well, but try to avoid some of that weight gain that has happened to me or again, has happened to other people. I've seen this happen to lots of, or heard about this happening to lots of folks. And obviously this is a little bit of a touchy subject, right? You start talking about weight and gaining weight, losing weight. And I guess, the first disclaimer, and it's not really a disclaimer because I absolutely believe this. I'm not saying that anybody should lose weight, right? Like size, shape is your business, and that's that, right? There's no, this isn't me trying to say that, if you want to run a better race, you need to lose weight. There's those articles out there. I am not wading into that discussion, right? This is just trying to give some information, or at least trying to give you some things to think about as maybe your fall race training ramps up, as you find yourself being hungry all the time, and maybe, and I've certainly been here, again, like 99% of these quick tips are things that I either am currently struggling with or have recently struggled with or can remember struggling with. So you're in company, good company, bad company. That's for you to decide. But I've been there too, where I'm running more than I ever have before. And how the hell come the scale is creeping up? Like, I don't feel like I'm eating that much more. Sure, I'm eating more because I'm running a bunch, but like, how come I'm gaining weight when I'm not trying to, right? So I've again, another disclaimer here. Most of you know that I'm pretty much all in, on board with the whole low carb, high fat type of eating style, being fat adapted, the whole 9 yards. All right. For me, it's working great. I promise I'm not trying to push that today, because I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that might seem like I'm going to push that. I'm really not. I promise I'm really not. If you want to keep eating carbs, hey, more power to, if it's working for you, great. All right. Just some things to think about as we get into it. So hopefully by now, not everybody has clicked off. Hopefully there's at least a couple people still listening, and something I say might be helpful going forward. So a few things to keep in mind when it comes to weight management, whether you're trying to gain weight, lose weight, stay the same, body composition situation, lose a little bit of fat, add a little bit of muscle, whatever. All of these weighty type of issues, some things to think about, some things to keep in mind, especially coming at it from a runner's perspective, especially coming at it from a runner's perspective who's trying to maybe increase your mileage, build up training for a race, short-term or long-term. All right. When it comes to calories, and I'm going to get some pushback for this, I know I am, but it is, but it's not as simple as calories in, calories out. Okay? And there's so much nuance here that there's like legit books written about this. And I'm going to try to keep this contained to a 20, 25 minute quick tip episode where this is just a small chunk. This is a 3 or 4 minute chunk of a 25 minute episode. Clearly, there's a lot of nuance here that I'm not going to get into, that I'm unable to get into. Part of the reason why I've been kind of hesitant to do this episode is because there's so much nuance in all of the things I'm going to talk about that it's like I'm trying not to be tricky, right? But so just bear with me on that and recognize that if you want some resources, you want some things to read about, to hear about, I can try to point you in some of those directions. Or you can do some Googling and some researching on your own, of course. And of course, that's the best thing, because when it comes to weight issues, obviously it's a personal thing, and figuring out what works best for you, trying some different things, learning some different things, maybe learning some things that are a little counter to what you've always heard in the past might help, okay? Or might be at least worth looking into. Something I'm trying to do, and in trying to do so, I've been listening to some audiobooks on just health and diet and admittedly with a little bit of a slant towards more of a low-carb situation. But I can't remember which book it was that I listened to on Audible recently, but it was talking about, not necessarily good carbs, not necessarily good calories, bad calories, but it was just talking about how different calories or different types of nutrients, so different macros between the carbs and the fats and the proteins, how those interact within our body. And some of the hormonal responses, especially when you're talking about carbs, you're talking about insulin response and how that impacts how our bodies process the different calories that we're taking in. And again, I'm not here trying to say that you shouldn't have carbs or that you should cut down on carbs, but it's important to keep in mind if you're looking at trying to if the scale is moving in a direction you don't want it to do, or it's not moving when you want it to, or whatever the case might be, that not all calories, that it's not as simple as calories in, calories out. That's kind of, to me, I don't know if this is a perfect metaphor, but that kind of feels like saying that in order to, that all miles are the same, right? That in order to train for a race, you just need to run a certain number of miles and you're fine. It doesn't matter if they're fast. It doesn't matter if they're too fast. It doesn't matter if they're slow. It doesn't matter if they're in the gray area of somewhere in the middle where they're not hard, they're not easy. Like, all miles are miles. All calories are calories. Like, yeah, but not really, right? So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that if you're doing some type of tracking, if you're doing some type of apps or plans where you're counting calories and you're tracking, like, that can be beneficial. That can be very beneficial, something I'll talk about in a little bit. But it's also important to remember that it's not quite that simple, okay? So just something to keep in mind, something to think about, that not all calories, or that weight loss, weight gain is not necessarily just a calories in, calories out. If there's a surplus of calories, you're going to gain weight. If there's a deficit in calories, you're going to lose weight. Like, kind of, but there's a lot of nuance to that. Okay, at least that's some of the learning that I've done recently. Maybe the stuff I'm reading is not accurate. I'm willing to admit that that's a possibility, but some of the newer research that's coming out in the last 4 or 5 years is pointing in that direction. So something to think about. Another thing to think about when it comes to, again, looking more specifically from a runner's perspective, increasing your mileage perspective, trying to make sure you're refueling well after the runs, because that's obviously an important part of recovery, an important part of just staying healthy, that our bodies crave nutrients more so than they crave calories. So what am I trying to say there? Well, if you're hungry all the time and you just can't put enough food in your mouth to satisfy the Runger, one thing that you might try to do, or at least look at, is how nutrient dense are the foods that you're putting in your mouth. Okay? And again, this one is easy to point back to this being a carb thing, because let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot of processed sweet type of foods are somewhat carb heavy, although they can certainly be fat heavy and protein heavy too, right? Like, so this isn't just a carb boogeyman type of situation. But if you're consuming a lot of empty calories of any persuasion, and by empty I mean calories that provide very little nutrient punch, right? Not a lot of vitamins, not a lot of minerals. Maybe there's some calories, but there's not a whole lot else. Your body is still going to be hungry. And this is maybe even more so true when you are in a training cycle, when you are logging lots of miles, because you're asking a lot of your body, right? You're asking your body to potentially do longer runs than you've ever done before. If you're training up for your first marathon, there's a pretty good chance you've probably never run 16 miles, 18 miles, 20 miles. Maybe you've never done a 30-mile week, 40-mile week. And there's a pretty decent chance, not a guarantee, but there's a pretty decent chance that you're going to be doing some of those things in the build-up to your first marathon. So you're asking your body to do something it's never done before, and in return, your body's going, hey, yo, we need some vitamins. We need some minerals. We need some nutrition down in here. And if you're taking in the empty calories in whatever form they are, and again, whatever macronutrients that are coming with those empty calories, yes, your body can use those to a point, like it needs some calories to do some work, but it also needs the vitamins and minerals. And so your body goes through those empty calories and goes, well, wait a second. We still need some whatever. We still need some selenium, or we still need some calcium, or some manganese. Or I don't even know if how much we really need those things, right? Like this isn't my area of expertise as far as the different minerals, but your body is all right. We're still short on some of these things. Hey, yo, we're still hungry down here, not because they're hungry for more calories, or not because it is hungry for more calories, your body, but because it's hungry for certain nutrients. And a lot of times that's why you might get certain cravings, right? You like why am I craving jerky right now? Well, maybe you're craving some iron or some sodium or something like that. That would be in heavy concentration in beef jerky. Or why am I craving something sweet? Well, maybe there's something that you're some element of like fruits or some vitamins or minerals or something like that you might be craving. All right. So making an attempt to try to at least consume a fair bit of nutrient-dense food. And I'm not saying you can't have a post-run donut, or you can't have a beer here and there, or any of those things that would probably be classified as a little bit more empty calories. But make those treats. Make sure that the bulk of what you're eating are calorie-dense things, whether that's nuts and seeds or good healthy meats and cheeses and things along those lines, fruits and veggies, of course, but trying to get plenty of foods that have good nutrient density might really go a long way towards curbing that Runger, because your body's going, we're good. Whether or not you have a calorie deficit, potentially you have a calorie deficit, but if you've got all your nutrition pieces covered, your body's going, we're good. We're good. We got all we need down here to do the repair work to keep you healthy and strong. We're good to go. All right. So aim for foods that are a little bit more nutrient dense along with calorie dense. All right. But empty calories are not really your friend. I would argue they're not really your friend anytime, but especially if you're hungry and you're going through those calorie heavy, nutrient dense foods, you're just going to be packing in a lot. And your body's going to keep wanting more. Another thing to keep in mind, shifting gears a little bit. But a lot of times, and this has been, I don't know the exact, I can't cite it, but I feel like I've seen this in several reputable places. Our bodies, the signal for I'm thirsty and the signal for I'm hungry, they don't really delineate very, very well. I mean, if you're really parched, you kind of know you're really thirsty, right? But a lot of times, when you're kind of not really like just parched, but you're a little bit on the dehydrated side, it can feel like you're hungry. Or at least you can interpret that feeling that your body's trying to tell you, hey, we need something to drink here, but really you're like, I'm kind of could use something to eat. So if you're running a lot, if you're increasing your mileage, especially if it's still the summer months or it's kind of a warm fall, thinking towards a fall marathon, but obviously it can happen anytime. But if you're sweating a lot, probably a decent chance you're a little bit dehydrated, right? It's always a concern to talk about dehydration in the summer months anyway. When talking about running in the heat, things like that, make sure you're drinking plenty of fluids. But if you're, after a good long run, especially down in Florida in the summertime, I'm a bit of a sweaty mess, right? Even if I've taken in 20, 30 ounces of water or at least some type of liquid during my run, I'm just sweating it out like crazy. I'm still probably at a deficit hydration-wise post-run. And so if I'm not being conscious of drinking more throughout the day, whether it's, probably going to be some coffee after my run, but, making sure I'm getting some more water as well. I typically find myself standing in front of the refrigerator after a long run going, well, nothing really sounds good, but like, damn, I'm kind of hungry. And then like the light bulb goes on and it's like, well, wait a second. What if I just need some more to drink right now? And I'll drink a little bit of water, and sure enough, I'm not hungry. I was just thirsty, and I was misconstruing the signals my body was telling me. So, again, if you feel like you're kind of hungry all the time as your mileage is starting to increase, something to at least think about is drinking a little bit more water and seeing if that doesn't solve the problem. Because if you're a little bit on the dehydrated side, you can sometimes confuse that, thinking that your body's telling you you're hungry when really you're not. So there's another idea. Last but not least, and this one kind of gets back to the tracking like I hinted at earlier, but if you're really trying to maybe lose some weight, or at least trying to maintain weight, okay? And if you're struggling with that, the scale's kind of creeping up on you and you're not really wanting that to happen. One thing that has absolutely helped me, it's helped me multiple times. You'd think I'd have learned this lesson the first time. It's taken me a couple times to really figure it out. But being intentional by tracking my calories has been a game changer for me. It doesn't necessarily, it's not something that I like to do all the time. It's not something that I'm currently doing as I'm recording this. But for about 3 months earlier this year, I was using the chronometer app. I was tracking all the things I was eating. I was being more aware of how many calories are in some of the foods that I'm eating and what kind of the nutrient breakdown is, and just kind of keeping track of things. The biggest thing that helped me to do, I think more so than worrying about exactly how many calories and whatnot, is I was much more intentional about eating versus kind of just grazing throughout the day. Because when I wasn't tracking, it was like, well, who cares if I have a handful of almonds here and a piece of cheese there and, a little bit of this, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of veggies, a little bit more for lunch, like, just kind of whatever. But when I was tracking, it was like, well, God, I don't want to try to get out and measure out a quarter of a cup of almonds. So I just won't have the almonds. Because kind of turns out I probably wasn't that hungry. It was probably more of a hydration issue anyway. But just putting that extra little piece in there for me of, do I really want to eat this or not? Kind of prevented some of that mindless grazing. And when you're hungry, mindless grazing, it can happen. It can happen. So, if you're going to track, or if you're thinking about maybe that's something that you might do, that could be an option to help keep, weight gain from happening if that's not something that you're trying to do, by just forcing you to really think about everything you're eating, everything you're putting in your mouth. It can also lead to some realizations of like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how many calories, especially how many maybe empty calories were in, this food or that drink or this treat or whatever. So it can be eye-opening, and it can bring intention. It can force you to be intentional, or encourage you, I guess, to be intentional about what you're eating. So there we go-ish. Hopefully I made it through without royally upsetting everyone. Again, I'm not trying to say that anybody needs to lose weight, should lose weight, anything along those lines. I also know that from, I don't know what the percentage is, 60, 70, 80% of the folks that have hired me over the years, when I ask if there's any other fitness-related goals, pretty common, like, hey, I wouldn't mind losing a couple pounds. So if that's you, and that's something you're struggling with, especially if you're running more, building up for a race, and struggling, and maybe not seeing the results on the scale that you might expect to see, some things to think about to try to keep the Runger at bay, keep you healthy, make sure you're fueling your body well, but potentially, if it's one of your goals, to not increase your body weight, just keep in mind that it's not specifically a calories in, calories out situation. Yes, that's part of the equation, but different types of foods, different types of calories do impact your body differently. And it's not just across the board. Again, I think I tried to make this point earlier, but some people can eat certain things and not have a problem. Some people really do. So it's just, you got to play with that and figure out what works for you. But it's not necessarily a calories in, calories out thing. Remember that your bodies crave nutrients more so than they crave calories. So when you're hungry, a lot of times that's your body trying to tell you that it needs a certain thing. So eat nutrient-dense foods as much as possible. Have a treat here and there, of course. Life's too short to not have a treat once in a while. But if the bulk of your caloric intake is nutrient-dense food, you probably won't be as hungry as you are if you're eating a little bit more empty calories on a regular basis. Remember that you also might just be dehydrated and misconstruing your body's signals for, hey, get me something to drink with like, I'm kind of hungry. And then you find yourself eating more than you need, still not satisfying that craving because, hey, you're thirsty. Your body's trying to tell you it needs some more fluids. So maybe dehydration can be playing a part. And then last but not least, if you can sometimes maybe being intentional about what you're eating. Maybe that includes tracking, maybe it doesn't, but being intentional about the food you're putting in your mouth, that can make a big difference as well. So some things to think about. I know that nutrition, especially when it comes to like weight loss, is a touchy subject. And the goal for today was less about telling you what to do, and if you're in that situation, and more about saying, here are some things to think about. Some things that I've thought about that have helped me. Maybe they'll help you. If you have further questions, I'm happy to talk about it individually. Of course, we can always schedule a call. You know, we can jump on. And I'm not here to claim that I'm a dietitian or a nutritionist. I've read a lot of books and done a lot of research and learning in this subject. I'm happy to have those conversations. But if you're looking for a recommendation, I know a couple of really good dietitians, nutritionists that specialize in working with athletes, endurance athletes specifically. Happy to make an introduction there. But if there's something that you would like to talk more about, or I can help in some way, let me know. I'm happy to do my best. All right. At DizRuns on Twitter, at DizRuns on Instagram. Of course, you can also just shoot me an email, dizruns@gmail.com. I don't know if you'd want to make it public by leaving a comment, but if you want to leave a comment on something else I said that you think is ridiculous or like that helped you or whatever the case might be, dizruns.com/959 is the show notes. Scroll on down to the bottom, or you can also leave a comment on YouTube if you're watching this there. And, yeah, hopefully, like I said, hopefully there's still some folks listening. Hopefully I didn't alienate everybody today. Maybe avoided touching the third rail as well. So hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, hit that share button. Although maybe this is a dangerous one to share. I don't know. If you enjoyed this one, hit that share button. Maybe somebody else will enjoy it as well. And otherwise, one way or another, thank you all for listening. Appreciate the time. Appreciate the attention. And until next time, y'all be well. Take good care. Thanks again for listening. And we'll talk soon, all right? See ya.